babes. How the heck are you? It's Stripper Sunday. It's been a hot minute since I did a Stripper Sunday, so I'm glad to be here. I'm excited. So if you saw my Fewmin Friday talking about SWERFS versus the strip clubs, you'll know what we're talking about today. We're talking about Platinum Lounge in Chester. So let's get into it. Strap in, enjoy the ride. So I was talking about Platinum Lounge in my SWERFS versus the strip clubs video. I need to reset my mirror. So I was talking about Platinum Lounge in my SWERFS versus the strip clubs video because Platinum Lounge isn't there anymore. It got its license renewal refused. Yeah, and it's no longer exists thanks to, it was basically down to one woman. Although initially when Platinum Lounge was conceptualised and Nigel wanted to open the club, it got a lot of pushback and it took quite a lot for Platinum Lounge to be awarded a licence in the first place. Because as I talked about in the SWERFS versus the strip clubs video, I keep saying that, don't I? Go watch the video if you haven't watched it. It's actually a really important one. If you are a pole dancer, and especially if you are a heels pole dancer, you really should be, interested and willing to give some time to educate yourself on these issues, because this is the kind of stuff that strippers have faced for years and years and years. And it is part of the reason why sometimes strippers get a bit pissed off with heels pole dancers, especially when they're really appropriating other stripper sort of language, I'll make it rain, woo, that kind of stuff, and, really enjoying stripper culture, but then are very silent when strippers are facing issues, because it's such a privilege. And I know this as someone who owns a studio now. It's such a privilege being able to enjoy the perks of stripper culture, dance in heels, be sexy, wear the outfits, and also sort of be able to have that defense of like, oh, well, it's just for fun, it's just a hobby, it's in a studio. And to be able to like talk about that in public and post it on social media when actual strippers and people do the job are just faced with so much hate and stigma, and people literally don't think they should be allowed to exist. It's happening in Bristol at the moment, which is what my SWERFS versus the strip clubs video was about. Strippers are really persecuted against by a lot of factions. So yeah, sometimes it hurts a bit seeing people dancing around in heels like la la la, touch your hair, make it rain, and then the people who actually do that as a literal job, as their livelihood, the people who literally own that culture are being told like, no, you shouldn't be allowed to exist. You contribute to violence against women. Like, it's fucking sucks. It sucks. So there was a lot of pushback when Platinum initially tried to get its license. When you apply for a license to be a sexual entertainment venue, there's lots of criteria, and it's things like being too close to religious buildings. And of course, Chester is a teeny tiny little city. If you've ever been there, everything's in very close proximity. You've got this massive cathedral, very historical cathedral in, the centre, and then the city centre isn't very big. So everything is literally like walking distance. I think to work from Platinum Lounge to Cathedral would maybe be like a 3 or 4 minute walk, so it's not far at all. It's not like Liverpool where to work across the city it'd take you, a couple of hours. It's like, nah. So also, obviously Chester has this huge historical importance and significance with the Roman walls and early Roman buildings and artifacts that remain. There's the Colosseum, there's mosaics. So because of that, they didn't really want to have that sort of establishment in the city. So when I spoke to the owner about it in later years when I worked there, so 2009, 2010, he said that the reason they were able to get the license granted was because they opened a charitable casino. So in Platinum Lounge, when you worked here, the ground floor was a bar and a couple of tables, not much seating space. And then literally just almost like a dance floor type thing with like a shelf where people could stand and have drinks, the bar, and people just stood there. And then the pole was literally, so the staircase then went up to the second floor, and the pole was literally in like this arch with the staircase behind, a wall each side, a big step down, and then just the open space in front. When you went up the stairs to the second floor, there was the dance room on one side. So all the private dances, lap dances, whatever you want to call them, were done in one big room. So it was just like seating around the edge of it, and everyone did it in the same space. And then on the other side was the VIP room, which was all little individual nice tables and chairs. And so it was quite good selling VIPs in that arrangement, because a lot of guys bought one just to fucking sit down. And then when you went up to the third floor, there was a charitable casino. So people, you know, paid money to play, but you couldn't actually like win money. It was, you know, all got donated to charity. And that is actually what, according to the staff, tipped it over that a license got granted, because one of the big complaints against strip clubs, if you read studies like Bindell's study that I talked about in my SWERFS versus the strip clubs, how many times am I going to say that today, video, is that the clubs didn't offer anything else other than sexual services. So nothing else other than naked ladies. That was the only thing on offer. And you know that they don't like that. That's considered, you know, morally reprehensible. But because they were offering another form of entertainment as well, that made it so that it wasn't just exclusively a sexual venue. Very interesting, isn't it? And obviously it was giving something back, being charitable. So it was controversial when it's got its license. Its license actually got revoked in I think it was 2013. They refused to renew the license, and Nigel, the owner, took it to higher up. I think it was High Court, and it got overturned. They got their license, you know, renewed and granted again, and then in 2015 it got removed again. And so it was like, it was very difficult, but it was effectively, the campaign was spearheaded by this one woman, and she had a shop on the Rose that I think was called the Rainforest Shop, if I remember correctly. And she was one of those real, like, radical feminists, you know, eco warrior, really like that kind of liberal. And I think everyone knows the kind of liberal I'm talking about, that's like, yeah, very extreme. And she really took it upon herself. It was like, it was her mission to just get Platinum Lounge removed. Yeah, and so she got churches on board. She went round residents and got signatures. I mean, in comparison, it wasn't a lot of signatures really, and people, you know, that she rallied for this complaint list. It was, you know, a few hundred, which isn't that many, you know, but they really did play on this, you know, the fact that it was close to areas of historical importance, and so close to the cathedral and to churches. And so, yes, the Platinum Lounge had its license removed in 2015, July 2015. Friends of mine were still working there at that point, and they really did do their best to campaign against this. You know, they went to the papers, they approached MPs, they wrote their stories, they did social media campaigns, they even did like a topless march in the street, and their voices were just ignored. It didn't matter that, I think it was over 80 people that lost their jobs and were dispersed, but real shame. It was a nice club. So that being said, let's talk about Platinum Lounge as I remember it when I was there. So I'm going to be talking about 2009, 2010, and the beauty of these years compared to earlier years that I've been talking about in my previous 3 videos is that we've got camera phones, and social media is commonplace now. So I have pictures. So I was actually modelling at the same time as I was working in Platinum. I did quite a lot of girl next door glamour modelling. I did like dance shoots, but I was going through something, folks. I was going through something when around this time period, and I think I just sort of realised that I could actually do what the fuck I wanted. I was just, I think, started my makeup artistry degree. So some of the makeup, when I'm looking on some of these pictures, I'm like, oh my goodness, you were doing a makeup artist degree. There just seemed to be a trend at that point for makeup where it looked like you'd put a teaspoon on your eyes, and that there was no blending at the edges. But I think that was sort of quite kitsch at the time. It was sort of, yeah, it was a look that a lot of people were doing at the time. So let's just go with it. I mean, we are talking 11 years ago still, you know, fashion's changed so much. But yeah, I was definitely going through something, and I think I was just living out my best mosher life, my best alt life. So I did stuff for like Zoo. Do you remember Zoo magazine and Front magazine? And you could be, you know, they liked the alt look, particularly Front magazine, like the alt look, the coloured hair, the tattoos. So, and again, I think I just was like, fuck it, I don't have to just be a little Barbie doll and have blonde hair to like be sexy. So when I started at Platinum, I had blonde hair with pink in it, and then I dyed the front of my hair blue, you can see in the pictures, and I had long extensions that were like browny black. So I thought for today I'm gonna go for as if I had the brown hair and blue, because when I had the blonde and pink, I was doing a lot of pinks, and I actually used to make sure everything like matched up. So when I had the blonde with the bright pink at the front of my hair, I had pink eyebrows and a pink landing strip as well. Like I matched, mate. I went for it. So yeah, today I'm doing as if I had the brown and blue. So we're gonna go for my best Platinum Lounge alt life with, like, I've put a teaspoon over my eye. But I also realised from looking at some of these old modelling pictures that I still have this bodysuit from one of the pictures. I still had it in one of my costume boxes. So we're gonna go, yeah, we're gonna go for this today. That's what we're going for. Yeah, and it also was nice because I think in every club you would have like one person that was alt. You'd always have one alternative girl because it's different strokes for different folks. And I had my nose pierced and I had my eyebrow pierced at one point, but that didn't really take, it came out. I had my tongue pierced. So I really like, yeah, when I was going through something. So we've talked a little bit about the layout of Platinum. Platinum was situated up on the Rose. So if you've ever been to Chester or you know about it, you'll understand what this means. But the whole place is very old. The buildings are Tudor. So they're all higgledy-piggledy and wibbly-wobbly, and you have to go up wooden steps, and it's almost like a wooden balcony that has the second set of shops and businesses on it. Yeah, and Platinum was one of those businesses that was on that second shelf. So it was, I guess, a little bit of a weird hidden location. It's very beautiful. But yeah, you'd go in, and it is crazy how it's like a rabbit warren, because sort of when you look from the outside and you see these rows, they almost look very small. But then when you go in, it's like there's so many rooms and tunnels and passages. I worked in the Debenhams in Chester when I worked for Bobbi Brown, and it was insane in there. It was so easy to get lost in those passageways and offices. You can't imagine it. It's crazy. It's literally like when you hear the phrase, it's like a rabbit warren, literally the places in Chester are like that. And they are very haunted. And there'll be people who roll their eyes and be like, okay. There is actually a photo somewhere of me and my friend Gemma when we were working in Platinum. They used to do, I think it was like once a month, they do on a Saturday night a costume night. And one night they did Army Girls, that was the theme. So we were all in camo and like had the camo and, you know, the plastic guns. And interestingly, we went out and flyered that night. And I can remember having 8-inch tie up the leg heels on and walking over the cobbles leafleting. And I get quite a lot of comments now where like I put a video on where I was doing star jumps in 8-inch heels in my hella heels, and people were like, oh, your poor ankles. But I think because we all used to do this crazy flyering in our slipper shoes, like just walking over cobbles and every surface. I think just now, like I have asbestos ankles, like they're just made of steel. Like when you think about it now, geesh, like that's dangerous, job hazards. But yeah, there was a photo taken on this particular night, and I actually spent hours looking through my Facebook and I can't find it. I know Gemma tagged me in it not that long ago on a time hop. So if I do manage to find it, I'll post it on the Glitter&Garterz Instagram. But there's a photo of us in our army gear in the private dance room. And there are so many oops on all of the pictures. And it's really strange. But yeah, I wouldn't like to be in those buildings on my own at night, put it that way. So you'd walk up the little wooden steps and approach the club. There was a little reception area where you'd have your receptionist for the guys to pay in. Yeah, and then you'd enter. And it's interesting because although the way the club was laid out, there was no seating that actually looked at the stage. So the little bit of seating was this side of the staircase. And as I say, there wasn't much. The customers were encouraged to watch the stage because we actually had a DJ, and that's really unusual for a lot of the more northern clubs, that there is an actual working DJ. Talking northern, Birmingham clubs have DJs. Not many other clubs sort of more north than Birmingham have the DJ culture in clubs. Liverpool certainly didn't. You know, there'd be someone behind the bar that would have your CD and play your CD if you wanted to go on stage. And it's particularly unusual considering the stage wasn't really fit for doing anything on. When I say to you it was tiny, it was literally like an alcove. There wasn't really enough room to spin. If you tried to do anything like a Scorpio, for example, you wouldn't have enough room to extend your leg. But you know what? Everyone made the most of it and everyone did the best they could with it. But I just think that was really unusual. Girls really did make the best of it. You know, it was just a case of getting creative. 3 girls who worked in Platinum at the time I was there, including myself, now have their own pole dance studios. So there were 3 of us at least who were quite big pole users, and I can think of a 4th who used to climb right to the top of the pole and do like a teddy with her legs open to the front. So it was just a case of getting as creative as you could. Again, the reality of working in a lot of strip clubs, I think, would shock a lot of heels pole dancers, because I think they've got this idea of these huge catwalk American stages like you'd see in Spearmint Rhino, and they think that they'd be able to do like loads of floor work and roll around and do all this heel banging and elaborate leg stuff. And it's like, even in clubs that encourage the stage, the reality of it is a lot of the time you're turning up and being like, what have I got? Okay, I've got 4-foot Squarespace, cool, let's use it. And you're still trying to sell yourself and earn money. So yeah, but people did get really creative. There was one trick people sort of started playing with on this stage, because if the way it was set out, because the railings of the staircase were behind, you could hold the railings and hold the pole and run your feet up the wall, kind of Matrix style, to do a flip over. So again, when you hear people say strippers don't do flips, I beg to fucking differ. We were doing weird, it depended how drunk I was, to be fair. If I've had a few shots, I'd have a go. Although one night, one girl had probably had a few too many shots and attempted to do it, and she completely lost her grip and literally fell smack on her head. And I can remember like just cringing for her. I know the guys being like, ow. So, you know, sometimes the Dutch courage worked in your favour, but obviously we don't recommend that these days, kids. Like, it was a very different world. This was around the time, 2009, 2010. I had just realised that there was this wider pole culture. I started having one-to-ones with Deb Riley at the British Pole Dance Academy, and I was just starting to like realise that pole had expanded in this huge way. And I got Bobby's Advanced Pole Tricks DVD, where there were things, you know, like handsprings, handsprings and crazy, like, to me, the stuff that was going on in that DVD was crazy horse. And I can remember, like, when I was attempting to handspring, I would like have a few shots to like get a bit of Dutch courage up, and then just like start hurling myself, like hoofing myself up, trying to kick into a handspring in heels. Like, it's absolutely insane. But yeah, we were creating all sorts of flips and crazy shit in the strip clubs long before those gymnasts came and had influence on us. So no, do not believe the hearsay. Platinum Lounge was a very classy club, and they were definitely going for the London strip club vibe, that kind of atmosphere and culture. We had to wear long dresses before midnight. You were expected to present yourself well, elegantly. There were quite a lot of rules. They could be quite strict, and if you took the piss, you would just not be scheduled in. You just wouldn't get offered any shifts for a little while. If they were consistently skiving off and sitting around doing nothing or trying to go home early, one of the managers was quite strict, quite ruthless, had a bit of a reputation. I'll be honest, I always got on very well with him, but yeah, he wasn't as popular with all of the girls. But the club was very well run. As much as there could be times where we felt that some of the decisions made by male management could be a little bit unfair, could be a little bit harsh and uncaring, we were also quite well protected. If customers took the piss, crossed the line, or attempted to touch us or do anything that they weren't supposed to do, it was dealt with very quickly and swiftly. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword. And I think the thing is, it's not unique to strip clubs, is it? There are so many different occupations I can think of where if women have male management, they can be very unsympathetic towards particular things to do with women. But also, we've all worked in jobs in every single field where we've had a boss that's just been a bit of a twat. It's why it surprises me, to be honest, that Platinum got hit as hard as it did by these activists and was one of the clubs out of the many I worked in that actually got the chop, because my goodness, I've worked in some clubs that were dodgy. Like, I'll be the first to admit it, there are a few clubs I've worked in that I didn't stay in because I was like, okay. You know, there was lots going on. You knew the management were taking drugs. You knew all sorts was going down. And they just seemed to never come under fire and get away with it. I worked in a club where I watched the doorman punch a customer who was being a bit leery while wearing knuckle dusters and drag him round the corner outside once they hurled him out to deal with him a little bit more. And that club never seemed to get criticised. And yeah, it's quite shocking to me because Platinum was just so above board. It was just, yeah, and there was a zero tolerance policy on drugs. The girls were treated really well. We never got ripped off. You know, the club weren't ripping us off in terms of house fees. I've worked in a club where they changed the house fee every night just on a whim according to how busy they felt it was. So it was a case of like on a quiet night, yeah, they'd reduce the house fee maybe a little bit, but on busy nights they would make the house fee so high that there was never a chance to like recover from the quieter nights. Like on a randomly busy night, they'd walk in and go, right, it's £200 tonight, and you'd be there going, what? Yeah, I just think when I think about all those different clubs and how like shady some of the practices were in them, Platinum was just so above board and by the book. I think because Platinum had had such a difficult time getting a license granted in the first place, and they knew that they had to show that they could run an establishment that was a gentleman's club that wouldn't cause trouble and adding to the statistics of crime in Chester. They really, you know, made an effort to hold the club to high standards. Even if you had a customer in the VIP room, you couldn't do a dance for them in there. You had to do your dance in the main dance room. So there was never any, unlike other clubs, there weren't like cubby holes or hidden away bits for people to be getting up to shady behaviour. You just always felt really safe and really well watched over. Platinum was similar to Liverpool in being a northern city that really you were looking for your busy nights being the weekend nights, Fridays, Saturdays. But the reason you really wanted to work at Platinum was for Chester races. And similar to working in any of the Liverpool clubs when Aintree was on, my goodness, when the races came, it was just absolute pandemonium. You cannot imagine how busy the club got. So Platinum was either £10 or £20 for a dance. And again, similar to Metropolis, it's a case of, well, what's the difference? We'll want £20 longer. It's twice the length of time. But if you ask the customers what's the difference between £10 and £20, £20 the dirtier, it was just longer. But because of the time it takes you to strip off your clothes during the first song, it just means that they get more time with you actually being naked, which I suppose is what makes it nerdier or dirtier. But as I said before, the dances were done in one big room and everyone was dancing in front of each other. So everything was just very out in the open. There was nobody hiding in corners, offering anything they shouldn't have been. It was a bit bizarre now I think about it, but because you were allowed to do floor work in Platinum as part of the dance, you weren't allowed to make any contact whatsoever. There was no lap dancing, but you could do floor work. And sometimes it'd be a bit crazy, especially on nights like the races when it was chocker, because you'd work into the dance room and there'd just be women sprawled everywhere on the floor in front of these guys, like, yay! Yeah, that's a little bit surreal to think about. But I developed a little trick during the races. I got a little bit canny because with Chester races, everybody likes to come in wearing their tags afterwards, you know, to show they've been to the races. I'm not sure. I think it's like a status thing, isn't it? But you'd get everyone come in and they'd still be wearing their tags. And you'd sort of get the guys that came in that you knew only wore their suit for a wedding, for the races, or for Kurt. And generally they were really easily distinguishable because they do this thing where they'd buy a bottle of champagne, but they'd walk around without a glass drinking out the bottle of champagne. And let me tell you something, there is no quicker way of telling that a dude is broke than a dude who walks around swigging out of his bottle of champagne. Like, having worked in strip clubs, you see people and come across people who've got money. And I don't just mean like a little bit of money. I'm talking people who have money. And in Platinum Lounge, you would get guys come in who had money, like stupid amounts of money. It's similar in the London clubs as well, but yeah, Platinum Lounge was unusual for up north in that because of being Chester and because of the races and being close to Cheshire, where there's a lot of wealth, you actually did get quite a lot of customers who were very wealthy. It was harder in Liverpool. In Liverpool, you didn't really tend to get many customers in with that kind of wealth and willing to spend that kind of money, like in London. But in Chester, yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the dancers who worked in Platinum, she'd actually just left from dancing before I started, but she did come into the club from time to time. She is now on the Real Housewives of Cheshire. And I'm not sure, but I think she met the guy she is married to in Platinum. I think. I'm sure somebody told me that. I might be wrong, but I'm sure she did. So yeah, there you go. One of the old Platinum dancers is now one of the Real Housewives of Cheshire. So yeah, there was money to be seen and money to be made. But because I know a tiny bit about horse racing from being involved with horses for quite a few years, I started looking for the tags on the guys that came in that said owner, because it was quite clear to read them. And obviously people ain't owning race horses that are in Chester races unless they're fairly affluent. And I'll tell you what, it started working an absolute treat for me, just being a little bit sneaky, having a look at those tags on race day rather than having to, you see, again, we're talking, you know, at this point, I've been dancing for what, 7 years, 6, 7 years, and you do sort of get get onto some of the tricks, but also you're more wanting to earn your money from VIPs if you can. So you can sit down and have a little bit of a rest. During Chester races, it was the one time where the manager would let us wear flip-flops towards the end of the night because you had to. You could not on really busy race days, especially when you're doing 3-4 days in a row that busy. Your feet are destroyed if you try and wear stripper shoes for that number of hours. Like, I know sometimes from training pole for a few hours my feet hurt. So yeah, stripping. Goodness, I'd forgotten about the foot pain. I'd actually forgotten about the foot pain. Your feet are just ruined. So we were allowed to put on flip-flops and I would end up dancing the last few hours of my shift in flip-flops. I didn't want to be doing that shit, so I started to try and get a little bit canny and be like, right, let's look out for who owns a hearse and who is going to be more likely. Now again, because of the way the club was laid out, there weren't many tables and chairs. Most of it was standing. So if you've got someone who's got a bit of money and they've come into a club and it's really busy, they're being jostled around, they're having to stand up, they will be willing to spend that money for the VIP just to get a nice sit down and just be able to chill. So in the VIP room, there was a TV where you could see the stage downstairs and see the club downstairs. So you could watch, whoever was on the pole from sitting in the VIP room. And it was just nice. I'd try and find the ones with the money and be like, you don't want to be standing around getting jostled. Let's go and have a nice sit down. And I'd just be there drinking my champagne with my feet up like, oh my fucking God. It was quite tricky because there'd be a queue for the VIP room on races night and when it was busy. So sometimes they wouldn't let you to continue renewing your VIP with a customer if there was a big queue waiting to go in, which was a shame. It was actually during my time while I was working in Platinum that I lost my shit with dancing, to be honest, and had to take a step back from it for a little bit. I talked previously about that change in culture with stripping, and it was the culture of the clientele, and that real shift between having people who came in, spoke to you nicely, revered you, were there expecting to spend money. And then when that cultural shift came, especially I'd say with the younger customers, and I can remember distinctly being in Platinum. So it was this one Saturday night, it got quite late, the club's winding down, there's not that many people left in. It'd been an alright night, not anything to write home about, but okay. And there was a group of young lads sitting in the seating bit on the first floor nearish the door. So a couple of us went over to talk to them, the usual patter, have you had a good night, would any of you guys like a dance? And these young lads, like, I'm not meaning to be offensive, but they're the kind of lads that kind of look like wannabe Oasis cast-offs, like that real scruffy, like, I kind of need a bath student look where they think that they're Noel Gallagher and actually they're just a bit smelly. And they're only about 18, 19 years old. So bear in mind, from my time working in Stringfellows and Spearmints in the big club, I'm used to guys like this, revering me. And also, not to be arrogant, but on a night out, these are the kind of guys that would fall over themselves to attempt to, chat up any women that look like me. And this little lad who looks like a knockoff Liam Gallagher sneers at me and goes, why would I pay you for a dance when I can watch porn on my phone right now? Why would I pay you a tenner when I can get anything I want to see on my phone right now? And it was just so weird seeing that cultural shift between us being these amazing ethereal fantasy women and then suddenly being treated and spoken to like pieces of shit. And over the years I've seen that culture exacerbate and get worse, and men start to talk about women who do stripping or OnlyFans or anything similar in a completely dehumanized way, like women who engage in any kind of work under the sex industry umbrella are not deserving of respect. I don't know what it was, social media, but it's like these overtly traditionalist ideas started being replayed. And it was around that time was the first time I heard very young lads, like 18, 19, 20, talking about women being wife material. That was a phrase I did not hear until maybe 2009, 2010. And now it's really prevalent to hear really young lads talking about that, you know, oh, she's of good stock. You know, she's from a good family. She does a respectable job. She's wife material. And it's just bizarre how that kind of culture and ideas came around and came to be. But yeah, that was the first time I sort of heard those kind of phrases and got that response to asking someone if they wanted to dance in a club. And it did become far more prevalent after that, but it was a culture shock for me, and it was one of the things that led me towards ending up not wanting to dance anymore, because it was very hard to deal with just being spoken to like a piece of shit, which it is in any job, isn't it? I remember recounting this story when I went on a night out in Wigan with Cara, who runs Authentics, and Jessica Risque and Chrissy Lopez, and the girls who run Creatures of XIX and Hella Heels, Melissa and Harriet. And when I recounted that story to Harriet, she turned to me and said that her answer to people saying, well, why would I buy a dance off you when I can look at any porn about it right now, is you can't smell porn. And I just, yeah, I've always remembered that as an absolutely quality comeback. Harriet Wolf, you can't smell porn. And it's right, isn't it? Because that's the whole thing with lap dancing, with stripping. It's an intimate experience. That's why you should buy OnlyFans rather than downloading things for free off Pornhub or wherever, because you get that intimate experience, and particularly with stripping, you've got an actual real human woman there in front of you that you can smell their perfume and shampoo and, you know, the sweat while they're dancing, and you can feel the brush of hair on your face. It's not the same. So I know there will be some of you who enjoy, as well as hearing about the clubs, coming here to see if I spill the tea about some of Misty's tragic life decisions. So I've talked about us having one manager at Platinum that was quite strict and wasn't particularly popular with a lot of the girls. Well, we also had another manager who was a lot more popular with the girls, very sweet, very nice, was a lot more easygoing. He'd be the one that if you wanted to go home early, you'd try and collar to ask rather than the other. And so I started dating this manager. I was in a relationship with this manager, met at Platinum Lounge, and this was actually one of the main reasons I had to stop working there. And this ties in quite nicely. It's interesting, this Stripper Sunday episode is actually tying in my True Crime Tuesday episode about Clare's Lure and my last Fewmin Friday about the SWERFS agendas against strip clubs really nicely. The three of them have come together with a little bow because this guy was my manager. Seemed like the loveliest guy, really sweet. He was friends with a lot of the other staff who worked in Platinum, and his friends used to come in for drinks. So why would you think anything might be untoward about this person, right? Well, so there've been a few like little red flags that went off, just slightly weird things like, and it was always after he'd had a drink. Like one day after he'd had a drink, he just randomly wouldn't let me into the bedroom, just barricaded the door and was whispering in my ear, you crossed the line, you crossed the line. And I was like, dude, you're fucking drunk and you're being weird, what the fuck? And then he started actually pushing me back and just kept saying, you crossed the line. And I had no idea what this meant, what I was supposed to have done, but he literally would not let me into the bedroom. And he couldn't drive. Well, he could drive, but he didn't have a car. And he lived in Chester, I lived on the Wirral. It's like 20 miles difference. So had a couple of drinks that night, so I couldn't just leave and drive my car, and he physically would not let me into the bedroom to go to sleep. So I had to like sleep on the couch. And then the next day, like as soon as I woke up, I just got up and left. And then he'd just be like, what? And I was like, dude, what the fuck? Like, that's weird. What you did was weird. And it's like, low-key abusive, what the fuck? And then, you know, it'd be like, oh, I'm really sorry, like, you know, I was just drunk. But he would just have these weird little tempers out of nowhere or do these weird things. So I'd been booked to do like a promo model event, actually by the other manager, the one that a lot of girls didn't like. As I say, I got on really well with him. I'd been booked to an event with him, with some other girls, like out in Cheshire. So my ex was driving my car and my son was in it, who was a toddler at the time. And the plan was that he drove my car, dropped me off, went away with my son while I worked, and then came back and picked me up. Bear in mind, this guy, although he was a manager at Platinum and was on a managerial wage, never seemed to have any money. And I was always paying for everything because obviously I was stripping, so I earned quite well. So we had these kind of arrangements because I was like, dude, I'm always paying for everything. Like, you're going to have to pull your weight a bit. So we got part way there, and I think I wasn't very happy about him having drunk the night before. Like, he'd drink and then sleep for ridiculous hours, and I'd be trying to wake him up and he wouldn't wake up, like literally would not wake up. I'd be physically shaking him and he'd be like so I think I wasn't very happy about it, and out of nowhere he just pulled the car over to the side, got out the car and walked off. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? I have a job to get to. You've said you'll mind my kid. And he just walked off and just literally left us sat in, abandoning the car on the side of a dual carriageway. So like, I'm having to ring this other manager and be like, dude has just pulled the car over and walked off. Like, I've literally been left stuck by him. So again, I was like really annoyed because I'm like, dude, I'm fucking having to spend money all the time and you pull this shit. And then dude wouldn't answer his phone, so I'm ringing him, and eventually he picks up and I can hear like that he's in Chester City Centre. I can hear like music because there's always like live musicians, and he sounded really odd, like really daydreamy, like yeah, everything's fine, yeah, I'm good. So I just went home, couldn't be arsed with this shit, was fuming because I'd lost this job and it lost me credibility. I probably wouldn't get booked again. It's a loss of money, right? It's a damage to the reputation. Go to uni the next day, and as I'm leaving uni, I get a phone call off my ex's best friend saying he's in custody. Like, he's handed himself into Blackham police station, and I was like, what the fuck? And it turned out that dude had, after he'd worked off and left us in the car, walked to Platinum Lounge, let himself in with his key, took £1,000 out the safe and went and gambled it away in slot machines at a betting shop. Went back and got another £1,000, intending to win back the £1,000 he'd lost, and lost that. Went back and got a third £1,000. All of this on CCTV, all visible. Lost that as well. And then decided to cut his losses at £3,000 down, gone and got pissed, and then handed himself into the police station. And it turned out that this was not the first time this had happened, that this was, I think, the third time that dude had stolen from businesses he'd been manager for. And this is why dude had no money, because he had a shitload of debt from basically an alcohol and gambling problem. This is where it gets really fucked up. And actually, this is, I think, what turned me onto feminism, why I became a feminist, because before that, I was really like, I was a little bit of a pick-me, to be honest. I really was, and was like, men are so fucking wonderful. Like, oh my God, like, you know, the right woman can change the devil. No, the right woman cannot change the devil. If a guy wants to behave like an utter cunt, he will. Don't ever fall for that bullshit that the right woman can change the devil, because let me tell you all this story. Look, I am spilling all the tea and my eye is weeping for no reason, but we're going to go with it. So, dude goes to court and agrees to go to Gamblers Anonymous and gets probation, even though it's like the third time, but he's like, I've got a gambling problem. And they're like, okay, rehabilitative model. If you go to GA, we'll give you probation. So I went to court with this guy. It's the first and only time I've ever been to court other than in a professional capacity, and, you know, supported him. He obviously lost his job at Platinum because they prosecuted him. So I had to stop working at Platinum because really it was fucking embarrassing. Like, you can't go and work somewhere when you're in a relationship with someone who fucking stole from the safe. Like, it's embarrassing. So I went and started out working at a club in Stoke. Went and started working back at ST1 in Stoke. And again, as I say, at this point in time, I was just starting to compete. So stood by this dude. He couldn't get a job. He's doing community service. He's got no money. He's on probation, going to GA. I drove him to his GA appointments. I drove him to do his community service. I paid for everything. I took him on a holiday to Turkey to sort of try and, like, you know, give him a bit of a break. I literally did fucking everything for this man, right? And he just continued to just be a shit. It escalated to when I won my first pole dancing competition, which was the Welsh Heat of Pole Divas in 2010. Me and my best friend and him and his best friend who went to Chester to celebrate, and we were in this club, and old boy decided out of nowhere in this club that me and my friend were laughing at him just because he was pissed, and he'd go weird and paranoid when he was pissed, that we were laughing at him, that we were spending too long in the toilet. And I don't know what he thought was going on in the toilet. We were sneaking off to the toilet to make a fool of him behind his back and laugh at him. And I was like, dude, you're being weird. So the next thing, this dude disappears and his best mate goes after him. So I'm like ringing best friend and I'm like, where the fuck is he? Because he's got my car keys in his pocket. Best friend says to me, he's just got in your car and driven off. So old boy had my car keys, was drunk, and stole my car to go drunk driving in it. He drunk drove himself back to his house and locked himself in his house with my car keys and house keys and refused to open the door to anyone and just went to bed and ignored everybody. Turned his phone off, went to bed, wouldn't let anybody into the house, deadlocked it. So the next day, his best mate got in touch with him and was like, you need to give her car keys. You need to fucking stop it. So I got my car keys back. And he refused to speak to me and said that I was in the wrong. It was all my fault. I was a terrible person for laughing at him with my best friend. Wouldn't take any accountability. So I actually started dating someone else very briefly. And one of mine and my ex's mutual friends was getting engaged and had an engagement party. And so, yeah, I went to this engagement party with this new dude I was kind of dating. And one of the DJs from Platinum was there, who was a friend of my ex. And he came up to me and started having a massive go at me and said that I was in the wrong because my ex, get on this, my ex, he used to watch your kid for you. He watched your kid while you went to work and now you're seeing someone else. And I was like, he watched my kids so I went to work to pay for everything for all three of us because he lost his job from being a liar and stealing. It actually turned out this dude also had convictions for DV. He had been convicted of being violent to his ex-partner, which again is amazing to me because I knew his friends and, you know, he was a manager of a club with a lot of women with a criminal record for DV, and that was absolutely fine. No, well, I don't think anyone knew, but his friends had not told anyone. They'd kept it a secret, and they made so many excuses. They were like, oh, it was a misunderstanding, like they had a volatile relationship, she threw an iron at him, so like he retaliated. And it's like, it was just so many excuses to keep saying that he was this really nice guy, but he obviously wasn't a nice guy because he had multiple criminal convictions, including DV, and did really bad things. And the killer of it was then, when I got home, this DJ that was friends with my ex put this status on Facebook, and all it said was, all women are snakes with tits. So I had supported this guy through court. He'd stolen my car and drunk drove it. I'd paid for everything. He'd been really shit towards me. He'd created all these issues, like, yeah, and I had completely supported him when he did the worst things possible. And his friend wrote a Facebook status saying, all women are snakes with tits. And it was just like, I think that was the moment I became a feminist. You know, I think that was the moment I realised that this lie we've been fed that sort of turns us into like pick-me's and being like, oh, well, you know what, I'll do everything for a man and I'll support him. I'll support a man who's at rock bottom and build him back up. You know what? It's bullshit. At the end of all this, there was like a Gamblers Anonymous like presentation evening type thing, recognition evening where family and friends could come, and my ex did this speech that was like thanking the people who'd supported him, and he thanked every single person in that room, like the people at GA, his best friend, or the people who'd stood by him, and he thanked everybody apart from me. And I was sat there like, like, I've been financially supporting you and literally driven you to all these appointments and everything, and I was the one person he didn't give any recognition or thanks to. And honestly, it made me realize that it's all a fucking lie when you're like told this story of like, if you are this good girlfriend and you sacrifice everything and you give to men, like they will never let you go and they will treasure you. No, they just treat you worse. Like, don't ever sacrifice your dignity and your self-respect. Don't ever do it. That's my, so there you go, there's my piping hot tea. But it plays into the stuff I've been talking about in terms of Clare's law and the fact that men will always defend other men, because everybody would have called that guy a nice guy. Like, all the girls who worked in Platinum would have thought he was a lovely manager. They all said he was such a nice guy, and he wasn't. He had a criminal record for DV and he was an absolute shit. Men will defend men, terrible men. Like, you can't believe them. Yeah, you can't believe people's male friends when they say that their male friends are wonderful people. Bullshit. And you can do everything for a dude who's behaved like absolute wank and you'll still be a snake with tits. So there you go. That's the last of the piping hot tea. So I'm just going to go and put my little bodysuit on now and we'll finish up. Oh my gosh, you know, at the start of this, I was like laughing like, oh my God, I was so into this look that looked like a little teaspoon, like with the harsh edges, like my really heavy, like alternative days makeup. Now that I've done this, I'm like, fucking love it, man. I fucking love this. This is amazing. Like, I actually really like it now it's on my face. Yeah, I feel spicy. I feel awesome. Let's just arrange my tits. Yeah, I'm feeling, yeah, I dig this. Maybe I'm just feeling angry and spicy today. So yeah, Platinum Lounge was just a lovely club, really fucking classy, lovely club to work in. Really great memories from working there. Such a shame that it got closed down, and fucking ridiculous that it did. Such a nice club. Good money to be earned there, really good memories there. Just senseless, just ridiculous, just morality purging. Yeah, and then obviously interesting memories for me from there. Like, this is probably why you don't shit on your own doorstep, but I do think it's like a real lesson learned. Don't ever let some fucking man who's dulling your shine and being a drain like drag you down to their level. Honestly, life's too short. You know, I'm here for supporting people who've made mistakes and want to do better and be better and are like literally working for it, putting that effort in. You know, if there's someone in your life who's made a mistake or maybe hasn't done so good and they are pulling out all the stops to do everything to show you that they're trying to be better for you, then great, that's completely different. But when you've literally just got some dude who's like leeching all of your shine and energy and resources and is like not doing anything to show that they actually appreciate you or want to do better and build better and be better, and it's all just about them. Oh my God, honestly, just I look back at my younger years and how much time and energy I wasted on losers, and it makes me cringe. Just literally like, cut that string. Cut that dead weight loose. Let that man go. Like, you know, everyone makes mistakes and people deserve support, but they also have to work at it themselves. And if you see campaigns and petitions such as the ones at the moment about the strip clubs in Bristol, fucking sign them. Get on board, defend our strip clubs, especially if you are a pole dancer and especially a heels pole dancer. Stop these crazy people from taking away our right to work. And the thing is, the more that you remove these really wonderful, safe, friendly, well-run clubs, you're pushing more girls to shitty, poorly regulated clubs where the management don't give a fuck and they get treated badly. Like, there are clubs like that. We know there's clubs like that. There's bars like that. There's offices like that. There's bad eggs in every industry. And the more you take away the good eggs, you're just looking to push more girls towards worse working conditions. And if you're someone who claims to be a radical feminist and actually claims to care about women, you should fucking care about the working conditions of women, all right? Fucking care. And that's me for this Stripper Sunday. Enjoyed coming and spilling my tea at you, giving my thoughts. Yeah, give me a comment, give me a like, give me a follow, stay involved. I've got a really good True Crime Tuesday this week. All about the murder of Clare Wood and Clare's Law. The week after, we're doing Shana Grimes. I know these videos are looking at why women don't trust the police and examples of how women have been horrifically let down by the police in this country. So really good, informative and educational to do with a lot of the current events happening at the moment, right? Really poignant for current events. I haven't decided what club I'm doing for my next Stripper Sunday. I might do LA Confidential in London, which was the first club I ever worked in, and that'll be good time. So yeah, think about that, and I'll see you again soon. Hope you enjoyed hearing me witter on today. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye, babes.